Haribol, schön dich wieder zu sehen.
Ja, gleichfalls. Ich wollte eigentlich früher wieder kommen, aber sonst irgendwie.
Ai. Haribol. Hare Krishna. So. Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Gopi Janavalabha Jaya Girivara Dhari Gopi Janavalabha Jaya Girivara Dhari Yashodanandana Jaya Vraja Janaranjana Jaya Yashodanandana Jaya Vraja Janaranjana Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Yamuna Tiravanachari Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Radha Madhava Jaya Kunja Bihari Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Radhita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Shri Radhita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda, Shri Radhita Gadadhar Shivasadi, Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Rama Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram Hare Hare. Shri Shri Radhamadeva Ki. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nastapresha Bhadresho Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Utamash Loke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki. Hare Krishna. Who doesn't understand German? One person. Hare Krishna. Wer versteht kein Deutsch? Eine. So, das einzige Problem ist, dass ich auf Englisch vorbereitet habe. And I think I'll speak in English if that's okay. Tut mir leid, sonst hätte ich gerne auf Deutsch gesprochen, aber ich habe auf Englisch vorbereitet. Can I have the book? Okay. Machen wir so, ich kann den ersten Teil ein bisschen auf Deutsch sprechen und dann den zweiten auf Englisch. Okay. Aber das Buch ist auf Englisch so. Okay. It's English. We speak in English, yeah. Sri Sutta Uvacha. Sorry, Sutta. Sutta Uvacha. Nishamyam Kaushara Vino Paravarnitam. Dhruvasya Vaikunta Pada Dirohanam. Prarudabhavo Bhagavati Adokshaye. Prashtum Punastam Vidura Prachakrame. Nishamya Kaushara Vino Paravarnitam. Dhruvasya Vaikunta Padadirohanam. Prarudabhavo Bhagavati Adokshaye. Prashtum Punastam Vidura Prachakrame. Prabhus. Matachis. Prashtum punastam vidura prachakrame. Hare Krishna. Sutta uvacha. Kshaje. Stum punastam vidura prachakrame. So, which words do we recognize here in the Sanskrit? Who can recognize a word with its meaning? Yes? Vaikuntha. Okay, very good. Another word? Yes? Yeah, Bhagavati. And Adokshaya, what does Adokshaya specifically mean? What did you say? Yes, beyond the senses. So, perfect, yeah. The Supreme Lord beyond the reach of the direct perception here. Then, other words you can recognize? Even names? Somebody else in those two? Vidura, yeah. Was noch? Dhruva, yeah. I think, yeah, that's the easiest. And then Nishamya means, where is Nishamya? After hearing. And then Kausha Ravina means by the sage Maitreya. And then Upavarnitam, described. And then Dhruvasya, to Dhruva. Then Vaikuntha, the abode of the Lord. And then Vaikuntha Adirohanam. Avirbhav Adirohanam means the ascent. And then Praruda, increased. Bhava, what means bhavas? We might know this from our stages of devotional life. Ecstasy, yes, it means here the strong devotional emotion. Bhagavati, to the Supreme Lord, Adokshai, who is not reached by normal sense perception. And then Prashtum, to inquire. Puna, again. Tam, unto him, unto Maitreya. And then Vidura asked Maitreya. Tam Vidura, Prachakrame, attempted. So the translation is thus: Sutta Goswami, continuing to speak to all the rishis, headed by Shaunaka, said, after hearing Maitreya Rishi describe Dhruva Maharaja's ascent to the Lord Vishnu's abode, Vidura became very much enlightened in devotional emotion, and he inquired from Maitreya as follows. As evidenced in the topics between Vidura and Maitreya, the activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and the devotees are so fascinating that neither the devotee who is describing them nor the devotee who is hearing is at all fatigued by the inquiries and answers. Transcendental subject matter is so nice that no one becomes tired of hearing or speaking. Others who are not devotees may think, how can people devote so much time simply to talks of God? But devotees are never satisfied or satiated in hearing and speaking about the Supreme Personality of Godhead or about his devotees. The more they hear and talk, the more they become enthusiastic to hear. The chanting of the Hare Krishna Mahamantra is simply the repetition of 3 words, Hare, Krishna and Rama. But still devotees can go on chanting this Hare Krishna mantra 24 hours a day without feeling fatigued. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So once again the verse, Sutta Goswami, continuing to speak to all the rishis headed by Shaunaka, said, after hearing Maitreya Rishi describe Dhruva Maharaja's ascent to Lord Vishnu's abode, Vidura became very much enlightened in devotional emotion and inquired from Maitreya as follows. Om Jnana-timirandasya Gnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurumilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhistam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swaparantikam Hey Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dina Bandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namastote Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavanishwari Vishabhanusute Devi Pranamami Hari Piye Vanchakalpatarubhishcha Kripa Sindhube Vascha Patitanam Bhavanevyo Vaishnavevyo Namo Namaha Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishta Bhuta Shrimati Karama Kanuna Samanti Namani Gaura Kaptam Tapto Vrajay Maya Puri Priya Prabhupada Priya Lokam Payanti Anivarjitam Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishta Bhutali Kurudasha Advaita Samaniti Namani Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Prishta Bhutale Shrimati Bhakti Vedanta Samaniti Namani Namaste Saraswati Devi Gauravani Prachadine Nivishesha Sunyavari Paskachari Deshatarine Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shira Chaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhaktavrinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So what is amazing about this verse is that Dhruva Maharaj ascended to the abode of Lord Vishnu, and hearing this, Vidura became very ecstatic. And then Prabhupada says, and the purport, it is so ecstatic to hear and chant the names of the Lord and the glories of the Lord that we can never stop hearing and listening to them again and again. Like we're chanting for many years the Hare Krishna mantra, Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. And still we never get fatigued. It is always new, it is always exciting. In a similar way, when we hear also about the glories of the Lord. We have heard already so many lectures from the Bhagavatam, and every day it's something new, something more exciting to hear and to realize. So thus, if we focus, if our heart is purified, we get attracted by such messages of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is interesting. Once I was in Govardhan, and I was reading with some devotees, and our sadhana was only reading 6 hours a day. 6 hours a day, 3 in the morning, 3 in the evening. Reading, no, it was actually around 3. But the whole day was practically reading. So it just our sadhana was only reading. So I woke up and went to, I was first day very excited, yeah, let's read with this great sadhus. And then I sat down and I fell asleep. Second day, I fell asleep, nothing. That was also, I don't know, it's just like, I didn't feel this attraction. I was like, it should be so amazing, isn't it? And third day, I was astonished. I wouldn't fall asleep. I thought I'm going to fall asleep again, but it was so exciting. I got this little taste, and probably also my body rested, but also it's more this taste I got after 3 days of listening for 6 hours. I got a taste for the names of the Lord and the glories of the Lord, that even after this reading of 6 hours, I had free time. And what did I do? I went to my room and continued reading other books, but it was reading, just hearing the glories of the Lord, the pastimes of his devotees. It just makes you so addicted. Once you get into it, you can't stop. But now, because we need to balance so many other things, we are like reading a little bit, 20 pages, and then we fall asleep. But actually, if you get a taste for the scriptures of the Supreme Lord and the glorifications, you can't stop. It's like a drug. So, yes, this is the amazing thing about the glories of the Lord. They make you happy. And I already said often that on the street I met once a lady. I distributed teachings of Lord Chaitanya. And I thought, young girl, lady, what is she going to get out of it? So I inquired, so how was the book? And I said, I didn't understand much, but it just felt nice reading it. She just felt good reading it, even though she didn't understand much. So just, even if you don't understand, just reading and hearing the sound vibrations is very pacifying. In a similar way, this is very pacifying to the heart. If you hear other stories, other things, it's not so substantial, not so amazing. But if you hear the glories of the Lord, it is something which satisfies the soul, and you can feel it. And then your japa comes to a completely different level, because you have so much input, so much knowledge about the glories of the Supreme Lord. And hearing and listening is really giving you a whole different world. I was also listening to other lectures, and one lecturer said, it is Bhakti Vigyan Maharaj, he said, when you when you try to study yourself something, and you are on your own, and you really try to get deep into it, you will never be able to get the whole scope of it. Because always you will be limited by your perception, by your knowledge, by your view upon it. But if you start listening from somebody else, you will get a different light on the same thing. And thus, the spectrum of what you have read or what you know will be, will be greater. So in a similar way, if we hear more and more about Krishna and this pastimes, we will get a different perspective upon it. It will become richer, it will become more juicy, it will become to life. So today I thought, like, speaking so much about these glories and this purpose was so amazing. So how about we hear some Krishna Katha, we hear the glories of Dhruva Maharaj, because it's basically the beginning of a new chapter, and I thought to recap the whole story of Dhruva Maharaj, because Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he loved to hear the story of Dhruva Maharaj again and again and again. He asked for the story of Prahlad Maharaj and then the story of Dhruva Maharaj to be told again and again. So thus, I will start reading to you the whole story of how Dhruva Maharaj became a devotee, how he joined. So, please fasten your seatbelts and concentrate. Yes. But now it will be very difficult because I'm going to read. So I think even translation is going to be difficult. Ja, mit dem Buch könnt ihr versuchen, mir nachzufolgen, aber ich werde ein paar Verse auch immer wieder überspringen und so. Okay, wir fangen an bei 8. Kapitel. Und ich lese immer nur die Verse. Kapitel, Vers Nummer 6 fangen wir an. Und also bei diesem Kapitel lasse ich eigentlich kaum was aus, nur lese ich eigentlich fast alles durch. Okay, ja, hier lasse ich nichts aus, lese ich eigentlich alle Verse nacheinander. Sri Maitreya continued, O best of the Kuru dynasty, I shall now describe to you the descendants of Swayambhuva Manu, who was born of a part of a plenary expansion of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Swayambhuva Manu had 2 sons. 1 minute. Kannst du es leiser machen, die 2 Kanäle, 13 und 14? Sonst ist es zu laut. 13, 14. Schaffst du es? Immer noch zu laut, ganz, ganz weit runter, damit ich es hier laut stellen kann und leiser. 13, 14. It's also maybe 14, 15. Yeah. Okay, still a little lower? Lower, lower. Okay, good. Now higher, higher. Mach's wieder hoch? Ja, so ist gut. Okay. So Swayambhuva Manu had 2 sons by his wife Satarupa, and the names of the sons were Uttanapada and Priyavrata. Because of both of them were descendants of a plenary expansion of Vasudeva, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they were very competent to rule the universe, to maintain and protect the citizens. King Uttanapada, who had 2 queens named Suniti and Suruchi, Suruchi was much more dear to the king. Suniti, who had a son named Dhruva, was not his favorite. Once upon a time, King Uttanapada was patting the son of Suruchi, placing him on his lap. Dhruva Maharaj was also trying to get on the king's lap, but the king did not very much welcome him. While the child, Dhruva Maharaj, was trying to get on the lap of his father, Suruchi, his stepmother, became very envious of the child. And with great pride she began to speak as to be heard by the king himself. Queen Suruchi told Dhruva Maharaj, My dear child, you do not deserve to sit on the throne or on the lap of the king. Surely you are also the son of the king. But because you did not take your birth from my womb, you are not qualified to sit on your father's lap. My dear child, you are unaware that you were born not of my womb, but of another woman. Therefore you should know that your attempt is doomed to failure. You are trying to fulfill a desire which is impossible to fulfill. If you at all desire to rise to the throne of the king, then you have to undergo austerities. First of all, you must satisfy the Supreme Personality of God in Narayan. And then when you are favored by him because of such worship, you shall take your next birth from my womb. The sage Maitreya continued, My dear Vidura, as a snake, when struck by a stick, breathed very heavily, Dhruva Maharaj, having been struck by the strong words of his stepmother, began to breathe very heavily because of great anger. When he saw that his father was silent and did not protest, he immediately left the place and went to his mother. When Dhruva Maharaj reached his mother, his lips were trembling in anger. He was crying very grievously. Queen Suniti immediately lifted her son onto her lap, while the palace residents, who had heard all the rash words of Suruchi, related everything in detail. Thus Suniti also became greatly aggrieved. This incident was unbearable to Suniti's patience. She began to burn as if in a forest fire, and in her grief she became just like a burned leaf, and so lamented. As she remembered the words of her co-wife, her lotus bright face filled with tears, and thus she spoke. This she didn't say. She was also breathing very heavily, and she did not know the factual remedy for the painful situation. Not finding any remedy, she said to her son, My dear son, don't wish for anything inauspicious for others. Anyone who inflicts pain upon others suffers himself from that pain. My dear boy, whatever has been spoken by Suruchi is so, because King, your father, does not consider me his wife or even his maidservant. He feels ashamed to accept me. Therefore, it is a fact that you have taken birth from the womb of an unfortunate woman. And by being fed from her breast, you have grown up. My dear boy, whatever has been spoken by Suruchi, your stepmother, although very harsh to hear, is factual. Therefore, if you desire at all to sit at the same throne as your stepmother, by controlling the mind and regulating the life airs. Your grandfather, Swayambhuva Manu, executed great sacrifices with distribution of charity, and thereby, with unflinching faith and devotion, he worshipped and satisfied the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By acting in that way, he achieved the greatest success in material happiness and afterwards achieved liberation, which is impossible to obtain by worshipping the demigods. My dear Dhruva, as far as I'm concerned, I do not find anyone who can mitigate your distress but the Supreme Personality of Godhead, whose eyes are like lotus petals. Many demigods, as Lord Brahma, seek the pleasure of the goddess of fortune, but the goddess of fortune herself, with a lotus flower in her hand, is always ready to render service to the Lord. The great sage Maitreya continued. The instructions of Dhruva's Maharaja's mother, Suniti, was actually meant for fulfilling his desired objective. Therefore, after deliberate consideration and with intelligence and fixed determination, he left his father's house. The great sage Narada overheard this news, and understanding all the activities of Dhruva Maharaj, he was struck with wonder. He approached Dhruva, and touching the boy's head with his all-virtuous hand, he spoke as follows. How wonderful are the powerful Kshatriyas! They cannot tolerate even a slight infringement upon their prestige. Just imagine, this boy is only a small child, yet harsh words from his stepmother proved unbearable to him. The great sage Narada told Dhruva, My dear boy, you're only a little boy, by whose attachment is to sports and other frivolities. Why are you so affected by the words of insulting your honor? My dear Dhruva, you feel that your sense of honor has been insulted. you still have no cause for dissatisfaction. This kind of dissatisfaction is another feature of the illusory energy. Every living entity is controlled by his previous actions. Therefore, there are different varieties of life for enjoying or suffering. Now you have decided to undertake the mystic process of meditation under the instruction of your mother, just to achieve the mercy of the Lord. But in my opinion, such austerities are not possible for any ordinary man. It is very difficult to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Narada continued, after trying this process for many, many births and remaining unattached to material contamination, placing themselves continually in trance and executing many types of austerities, many mystic yogis were unable to find the end of the path of God realization. For this reason, my dear boy, you should not endeavor for this. It will not be successful. It is better that you go home. When you are grown up, by the mercy of the Lord, you will get a chance for these mystic performances. At that time, you may execute this function. Every man should act like this. When he meets a person more qualified than himself, he should be very pleased. When he meets someone less qualified than himself, he should be compassionate towards him. And when he meets someone equal to him, he should make friends with him. In that way, one is never affected by the threefold miseries of the material world. Dhruva Maharaj said, "My dear Lord Narada, for a person whose heart is disturbed by a material condition of happiness and distress, whatever you have so kindly explained for attainment of peace of mind is certainly a very good instruction. But as far as I am concerned, I am covered by ignorance. This kind of philosophy does not touch my heart. My Lord, I am very impudent for not accepting your instructions, but it is not my fault. It is due to my having been born in a Kshatriya family. My stepmother Suruchi has pierced my heart with the harsh words. Therefore, your valuable instructions does not stand in my heart. O learned Brahmana, I want to occupy a position more exalted than any yet achieved within the three worlds, even by my grandfather. If you will oblige, kindly advise me of what honest path to follow by which I can achieve the goal of my life. My dear Lord, you are worthy son of Brahma, and you travel playing on your instrument, the veena, for the welfare of the entire universe. You are like the sun which rotates the universe for the benefit of all living beings." The sage Maitreya continued. The personality Narada Muni, upon hearing the words of Dhruva Maharaj, became very compassionate towards him, and in order to show him his causeless mercy, he gave him the following advice. The great sage Narada Muni told Dhruva Maharaj, "The instructions given by your mother Suniti to follow the path of devotional service to the Supreme Lord is just suitable for you. You should therefore completely absorb yourself in the devotional service of the Lord. Any person who desires the fruits of the four principles of religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, and, at the end, liberation, should engage in the devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For worship of His lotus feet yields the fulfillment of all of these. My dear boy, I therefore wish all good fortune for you. You should go to the bank of the Yamuna, where there is a virtuous forest known as Madhuvan. There you will be purified." One moment. And there you will be purified. Just by going there, one draws nearer to the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who always lives there. Narada Muni instructed, "My dear boys, in the waters of this Yamuna river, which is known as Kalindi, you should take 3 baths daily, because her water is very auspicious, sacred and clear. After bathing, you should perform the necessary regulative principles for Ashtanga Yoga. Then sit down on your asana in a calm and quiet position. After sitting on your seat, practice the 3 kinds of breathing exercises, and thus gradually control the life air, mind, and senses. Completely free yourself from all material contamination, and with great patience, begin to meditate on the Supreme Personality of Godhead." So it's so amazing that Narada Muni is so empathic towards Dhruva Maharaj, giving him all facilities to approach the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So he was so convinced by the determination of Dhruva Maharaj that he would give him this opportunity to just be there. And actually, Narada Muni describes now in the next few verses the darshan of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, how he has perceived him. And what more can you get than having a personal darshan of the Supreme Lord being described by a great saint like Narada Muni. So let's listen to these beautiful descriptions. The Lord's face is perpetually very beautiful and pleasing in attitude. To the devotees who see him, he appears never to be displeased, and is always prepared towards benediction to benedict them. His eyes, his nicely decorated eyebrows, his raised nose, and his broad forehead are all very beautiful. He is more beautiful than all the demigods. The Lord's form is always youthful. Every limb and every part of his body is properly formed, free from defect. His eyes and lips are pinkish, like the rising sun. He is always prepared to give shelter to the surrendered souls, and anyone so fortunate as to look upon him feels all satisfaction. The Lord is always worthy to be the master of the surrendered soul, for he is the ocean of mercy. The entire body of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Vasudeva, is decorated. He wears a valuable jewel helmet, necklaces and bracelets. His neck is adorned by the Kaustuba jewel, and he is dressed in yellow silk garments. The Lord is decorated with small golden bells around his waist, and his lotus feet are decorated with golden ankle bells. All his bodily features are very attractive and pleasing to the eyes. He is always peaceful, calm, quiet, and very pleasing to the eyes of the mind. Real yogis meditate upon the transcendental form of the Lord as he stands on the whirl of the lotus of their hearts, like jewel-like nails of his lotus feet glittering. The Lord is always smiling, and the devotee should constantly see the Lord in this form, as he looks very mercifully towards the devotee. In this way, the meditator should look towards the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the bestower of all benedictions. One who meditates in this way, concentrating his mind upon the always auspicious form of the Lord, is very soon freed from all material contamination. He does not come down from meditation upon the Lord. O son of the king, I shall now speak unto you the mantra, which is to be chanted in this process of meditation. One who carefully chants this mantra for 7 nights can see the perfect human beings flying in the sky. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. This is the 12-syllable mantra for worshipping Lord Krishna. One should install the physical form of the Lord, and with the chanting of the mantra, one should offer flowers and fruits and other varieties of foodstuffs exactly according to the rules and regulations prescribed by authorities. But this should be done in consideration of place, time, and attendant conveniences and inconveniences. One should worship the Lord by offering pure water, pure flower garlands, fruits, flowers, vegetables, which are available in the forest, or by collecting newly grown grasses, small buds, flowers, or even the skin of trees, and if possible, by offering tulasi leaves, which are very dear to the Supreme Personality of Godhead. It is possible to worship the form of the Lord made of physical elements such as water, earth, wood and metal. In the forest one can make forms no more than earth and water and worship him according to the above principles. My dear Dhruva, besides worshipping the deity and chanting the mantra 3 times a day, you should meditate upon the transcendental activities of the Supreme Personality of Godhead in its different incarnations as exhibited by the Supreme and personal potencies. One should follow the footsteps of the previous devotees regarding how to worship the Supreme Lord with the prescribed paraphernalia. Or one should offer worship within the heart by reciting the mantra to the Personality of Godhead, who is non-different from the mantra. Anyone who thus engages in devotional service of the Lord, seriously and sincerely, with his mind, words and body, and who is fixed in the activities of the prescribed devotional methods, is blessed by the Lord according to his desire. If a devotee desires material religiosity, economic development, sense gratification, or liberation from the material world, he is awarded these results. If one is very serious about liberation, he must stick to the process of transcendental loving service, engaging 24 hours a day in the highest stage of ecstasy, and he must certainly be aloof from all activities of sense gratification. When Dhruva Maharaj, the son of the king, was thus advised by the great sage Narada, he circumambulated Narada, his spiritual master, and offered him respectful obeisances. Then he started for Madhuvan, which is always imprinted within the lotus footprints of the Lord Krishna, and which is therefore especially auspicious. Now many of us have been to Vrindavan, and we all know this beautiful forest of Vrindavan. And there's one certain part which is called Madhuvan, and exactly there, Dhruva Maharaj performed all of his austerities. And now he got all the instructions how to do the worship of Vasudev with the mantra. And now he will start his rigorous performance of austerities so that he will be able to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So let's see how he gets the attention of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. After Dhruva Maharaj entered the forest to execute devotional service, the great sage Narada thought advised to go to the king to see how he was faring within the palace. When Narada Muni approached, the king received him properly, offering him due obeisances. After being seated comfortably, Narada began to speak. The great sage Narada inquired, "My dear king, your face appears to be withering up, and you look like you have been thinking of something for a very long time. What is that? Have you been hampered in following the path of religious rites, economic development, and sense gratification?" The king replied, "O best of the Brahmanas, I am very much addicted to my wife, and I am so fallen that I have abandoned all merciful behavior. Even to my son, who is only 5 years old, I have banished him, and his mother, even though he is a great soul and a great devotee. My dear Brahmana, the face of my son was just like a lotus flower. I am thinking of his precarious condition. He is unprotected, and he might be very hungry. He might have lain down somewhere in the forest, and the wolves might have attacked him to eat his body. Alas, just see how I was conquered by my wife. Just imagine my cruelty. Out of love and affection to the boy was trying to get up to my lap, but I did not receive him, nor did I even pat him for a moment. Just imagine how hard-hearted I am." The great sage Narada replied, "My dear king, please do not be aggrieved about your son. He is well protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although you have no actual information of his influence, his reputation is already spread all over the world. My dear king, your son is very competent. He will perform activities which would be impossible even for great kings and sages. Very soon he will complete his task and come back home. You should know that he will also spread your reputation all over the world." The great sage Maitreya continued. King Uttanapada, after being advised by Narada Muni, practically gave up all his duties in relation with his kingdom, which was very vast and wide, opulent like the goddess of fortune, and he simply began to think of his son Dhruva. Elsewhere in the forest, Dhruva Maharaj, having arrived at Madhuvan, took his bath at the river of the Yamuna, observed fasting in the night with great care and attention. After that, as advised by the great sage Narada, he engaged himself in worshipping the Supreme Personality of Godhead. For the first month, Dhruva Maharaj ate only fruits and berries on every third day, only to keep his body and soul together. And in this way, he progressed in his worship of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. In the second month, Dhruva Maharaj ate only every 6 days. Every 6 days. And for his eatables, he took dry grass and leaves. Thus he continued his worship. In the third month, he drank water only every 9 days. Thus he remained completely in trance and worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is adored by selected verses. And the fourth Maharaj became a complete master of the breathing exercise, and thus he inhaled air only every 12th day. And this way he became completely fixed in his position and worshipped the Supreme Personality of Godhead. By the 5th month, Dhruva Maharaj, the son of the king, had controlled his breathing so perfectly he was able to stand only one leg, just as a column stands without motion, and concentrate his mind fully upon the Parabrahman. He completely controlled his senses and their objects, and in this way he fixed his mind without diversion to anything else, upon the form of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. When Dhruva Maharaj thus captured the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who is the creation and who is the master of all living entities, the three worlds began to tremble. As Dhruva Maharaj, the king's son, kept himself steadily standing on one leg, the pressure of his big toe pushed down half the earth, just as an elephant being carried on a boat rocks the boat left and right with his every step. When Dhruva Maharaj became practically one with heaviness with Lord Vishnu, the total consciousness, due to his fully concentrating and closing all of the holes of his body, the total universe became trembling. And all the demigods in all the planetary systems felt suffocated and took shelter on the Supreme Personality of Godhead. The demigod said, "Dear Lord, you are the refuge of all moving and non-moving entities. We feel all living entities to be suffocating, the breathing process choked up. We have never experienced such a thing. Since you are the ultimate shelter of all surrendered souls, we have therefore approached you. Kindly save us from this danger." The Supreme Personality of Godhead replied, "My dear demigods, do not be perturbed by this. It is due to the severe austerity and full determination of the son of Uttanapada, who is now fully absorbed in thought of me. He has obstructed the universal breathing process and I should stop this boy and his severe acts of austerities, and you will be saved from this situation." And now the Lord will come to Dhruva Maharaj. So it's amazing to see the determination that Dhruva Maharaj had to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He was not stopped. He was not afraid to do all of these austerities. For 6 months, and within 6 months only, he attained perfection. So it is possible for all of us to attain this supreme perfection. Maybe not in such extreme ways Dhruva Maharaj did, but we can try in our own little attempts to control our senses and to perform austerities to please Srila Prabhupada and Nrsingadev and all the devotees. The great sage Maitreya Muni told Vidura, when the demigods were thus reassured by the Supreme Personality of Godhead, they were freed from all fears, and after offering their obeisances, they returned to their heavenly planets. Then the Lord, who is none different from the Sahasrashirsha incarnation, got on the back of Garuda, who carried him to the Madhuvan forest to see his servant Dhruva. The form of the Lord, which was brilliant like lightning, and in which Dhruva Maharaj, in his mature yogic process, was fully absorbed in meditation, all of a sudden it disappeared. Thus Dhruva was perturbed. He couldn't see anymore the Lord within his heart. His meditation had broken, but as soon as he opened his eyes, he saw the Supreme Personality of Godhead personally present, just as he had been, the Lord in his heart. When Dhruva Maharaj saw the Lord just in front of him, he was greatly agitated and offered him obeisances and respect. He fell flat before him like a rod and became absorbed in love of Godhead. Dhruva Maharaj in ecstasy looked upon the Lord as if he were drinking the nectar of the Lord's with his eyes, kissing the lotus feet of the Lord with his mouth, and embracing the Lord with his arms. Such a sweet moment when Dhruva Maharaj is kissing the lotus feet of the Lord. Although Dhruva Maharaj was a small boy, he wanted to offer praise to the Supreme Personality of Godhead in suitable language, but because he was inexperienced, he could not adjust himself immediately. the Supreme Personality of Godhead, being situated in everyone's heart, couldn't understand Dhruva Maharaj's awkward position. Out of his causeless mercy, he touched with his conchal the forehead of Dhruva Maharaj, who stood before him with folded hands. At that time, Dhruva Maharaj became perfectly aware of the Vedic conclusions and understood the absolute truth and his relationship with all living entities. In accordance with the line of devotional service to the Supreme Lord, whose fame is widespread, Dhruva, who in the future would receive the planet which would never be annihilated even during the time of dissolution, offered his deliberate and conclusive prayers. Dhruva Maharaj said, "My dear Lord, you are all-powerful. After entering within me, you have enlivened all my sleeping senses, my hands, legs, ears, touch, life force, and especially my power of speech. Please let me offer my respectful obeisances unto you. My dear Lord, you are the one, but by your different energies you appear differently in the spiritual and material worlds. You create the total energy of the material world with their external potency, and after creation you enter within this material world as a supreme soul. You are the supreme person, and through the temporary modes of material nature you create varieties of manifestation, just as fire entering into the wood in different shapes burned brilliantly in different varieties. Persons who worship you simply for the sense gratification of this bag of skin are certainly influenced by your illusory energy. In spite of having you, who are like a desire tree and are the cause of liberation for birth and death, foolish persons such as me desire benedictions from you for sense gratification, which is available even for those who live in hellish conditions. My Lord, the transcendental bliss derived from meditating upon your lotus feet and hearing about your glories from pure devotees is so unlimited that it is far beyond the stage of Brahmanda, wherein one thinks himself merged with the impersonal Brahman. Since Brahmanda is also defeated by the transcendental bliss derived from devotion service, then what to speak of the temporary blissfulness of elevating oneself to the heavenly planets, which is ended by the separating sword of time. Although one may be elevated to the heavenly planets, he falls down in due course of time. O Lord, who have a lotus navel, if a person happens to associate with a devotee whose heart always hankers after your lotus feet, seeking always their fragrance, he is never attached to the material body or in a bodily relationship, to offspring, friends, home, wealth, and wife, which are very, very dear to materialistic persons. Indeed, he does not care for them. O my Lord, O Supreme Lord, you are supreme personified form of all benediction. Therefore, for one who abides in your devotional service with no other desire, worshipping your lotus feet is better than becoming king and lording it over a kingdom. That is the benediction of worshipping your lotus feet. To ignorant devotees like me, you are the causeless merciful maintainer, just like a cow who takes care of the newly born calf, supplying milk and giving it protection from attack. My dear, the great sage Maitreya continued, my dear Vidura, when Dhruva Maharaj, who had good intentions in his heart, finished his prayer, the Supreme Lord, the personality of Godhead, who is very kind to his devotees and servants, congratulated him, speaking as follows. My dear Dhruva, son of king, you have executed pious vows, and I also know the desire within your heart. Although your desire is very ambitious and very difficult to fulfill, I shall now favor you its fulfillment. All good fortune to you. Just imagine the Supreme Lord speaking to you. He's right there in front of your eyes. You have been meditating and wanting to see him for such a long time, so intensely. You didn't eat, you didn't do anything but to meditate and chant and chant and chant. And finally he's in front of you and he's giving you his benedictions. The Supreme Personality of Godhead continued, my dear Dhruva, I shall award you the glowing planet known as the pole star, which will continue to exist even after this dissolution, at the end of the millennium. No one has ever ruled this planet, which is surrounded by all the solar systems, planets and stars. All the luminaries in the sky circumambulate this planet, just as bulls treat around the central pole for the purpose of crushing grains. Keeping the pole star to the right, all the stars inhabited by the great sages like Dharma, Agni, Kashyapa and Shukra circumambulate this planet, which continues to exist even after the dissolution of others. After your father goes to the forest and awards you the rule of his kingdom, you will rule continuously the entire world for 36,000 years. All your senses will continue to be as strong as they are now. You will never become old. The Supreme Lord continued. Sometimes in the future, your brother, Uttama, who will go hunting in the forest, and while absorbed in hunting, he will be killed. Your stepmother Saruchi, being maddened upon the death of her son, will go search for him out in the forest, but she will be devoured by a forest fire. The Lord continued, I am the heart of all sacrifices. You will be able to perform many sacrifices and also give great charities. In this way, you will be able to enjoy the blessings of material happiness in this life, and at the time of your death, you will be able to remember me. The personality of God continued, my dear Dhruva, after your material life and this body, you will go to my planet, which is always offered obeisances by the residents of all other planetary systems. It is situated above the planets of the 7 rishis. The great sage Maitreya said, after being worshipped and honored by the boy Dhruva, and after offering him his abode, Lord Vishnu on the back of Garuda returned to his abode as Dhruva Maharaj looked on. Despite having achieved the desired result of his determination by worshipping the lotus feet of the Lord, Dhruva Maharaj was not very pleased. Thus he returned to his home. Shri Vidura inquired, my dear Brahmanas, the abode of Lord Vishnu is very difficult to attain. It can be attained only by pure devotional service, which alone pleases the most affectionate, merciful Lord. Dhruva Maharaj achieved this position even in one life, and he was very wise and conscientious. Why then was he not very pleased? Very interesting. The Supreme Lord was just present in front of Dhruva Maharaj, but Dhruva Maharaj, after having had darshan of the Lord, was not very happy. What had happened? Maitreya answered. Dhruva Maharaj's heart, which was pierced by the arrows of the harsh words of the stepmother, was greatly aggrieved. And thus, when he fixed upon his goal of life, he did not forget his misbehavior. He did not demand actual liberation from the material world, but at the end of his devotional service, when the Supreme Personality of Godhead appeared before him, he was simply ashamed of the material demands he had in his mind. Dhruva Maharaj thought to himself, to endeavor to be situated in the shade of the lotus feet of the Lord is not an ordinary task, because even great brahmacharis, headed by Sanandana, who practiced Ashtanga Yoga in trance, attained the shelter of the Lord's lotus feet only after many, many births. Within 6 months, I achieved the same result, yet due to thinking differently from the Lord, I fell down in my position. Alas, just look at me. I am so unfortunate. I approached the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, who can immediately cut the chain of repetition of birth and death, but still out of my foolishness, I prayed for things which are perishable. So just imagine, you see the Supreme Lord, and He only gives you material benedictions. So you're like, oh no, I'm stuck here. Still, he got the benediction to go to his planet and to have his association. But still, he was very sad. Since all the demigods who are situated in higher planetary systems will have to come down again, they are all envious of my being elevated to the Vaikuntha Loka by devotional service. These intolerant demigods have dissipated my intelligence, and only for this reason I could not accept the genuine benediction of the instructions of sage Narada. Now he's blaming the demigods. I was under the influence of the illusory energy, being ignorant of the factual facts. I was sleeping on her lap. Under a vision of duality, I saw my brother as my enemy, and falsely I lamented within my heart, thinking they are my enemies. It is very difficult to satisfy the Supreme Personality of Godhead. But in my case, although I have satisfied the super soul of the whole universe, I have prayed only for useless things. My activities were exactly like the treatment given to a person who is already dead. Just see how unfortunate I am. For in spite of meeting the Supreme Lord, who can cut one's link to birth and death, I have prayed for the same conditions again. Because of my state of completely foolishness and paucity of pious activities, although the Lord offered me His personal service, I wanted material name, fame, and prosperity. My case is just like that of a poor man. When satisfied, a great emperor who granted to give him anything he might ask, out of ignorance, asked only for a few broken grains of husked rice. My dear Vidura, persons like you, who are pure devotees of the lotus feet of Mukunda, and who are always attached to the honey of his lotus feet, are always satisfied in serving the lotus feet of the Lord. In any condition of life, such persons remain satisfied, and thus never ask the Lord for material prosperity. I heard his son Dhruva was coming back home, as if coming back to life after death. He could not put his faith in the message, for he was doubtful of how this could happen. He considered himself most wretched, and therefore he thought that it was not possible for him to attain such good fortune. Although he could not believe the words of the messenger, he had full faith in the words of the great sage Narada. Thus he was greatly overwhelmed by the news. King Uttanapana, being very eager to see the face of his lost son, mounted a chariot drawn by excellent horses and bedecked with golden filigree, taking with him many learned brahmanas, all the elderly personalities of his family, his officers, his ministers, and his immediate friends immediately left the city. As he proceeded in this parade, there were auspicious sounds of conch shells, kettle drums, flutes, and the chanting of Vedic mantras to indicate all good fortune. Upon seeing Dhruva Maharaj approaching the neighboring small forest, King Uttanapada with great haste got down from his chariot. He had been very anxious for a long time to see his son Dhruva, and therefore with great love and affection he went to embrace his long-lost boy. Breathing very heavily, the king embraced him with two arms, but Dhruva Maharaj was not the same as before. He was completely sanctified by spiritual advancement due to having been touched by the lotus feet of the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Reunion with Dhruva was fulfilled King Uttanapada's long-cherished desire, and for this reason he smelled Dhruva's head again and again and bathed him in torrents of very cold tears. He was so affectionate to see again his son after such a long time. Then Dhruva Maharaj, the foremost of all nobles, first of all offered his obeisances to the feet of his father and was honored by his father with various questions. Then he bowed his head to the feet of his two mothers. Suruchi, the younger mother of Dhruva Maharaj, seeing that the innocent boy had fallen at her feet, immediately picked him up, embracing him with her hands, and with tears of feeling she blessed him with the words, "My dear boy, may you long live." Unto one who has transcendental qualities due to friendly behavior with the Supreme Personality of God, and all living entities offer honor, just as water automatically flows down by nature. The two brothers Uttama and Dhruva Maharaj also exchanged their tears. They were overwhelmed by the ecstasy of love and affection. When they embraced one another, the hair on their bodies stood up. Suniti, the real mother of Dhruva Maharaj, embraced her tender son, who was dearer to her than her own life, and thus forgot all material grief, for she was very pleased. The residents of the palace praised the queens. "Dear queen, your beloved son who was long time gone, and is your great fortune, has now come back. It appears therefore that your son will be able to protect you for a very long time and put an end to all your material pangs." The sage Maitreya continued, "My dear Vidura, when everyone was thus praising Dhruva Maharaj, the king was very happy and had Dhruva and his brother seated on the back of a she-elephant. Thus he returned to his capital, where he was praised by all classes of men." Now they're coming back to the kingdom. Finally, the son, Dhruva Maharaj, lost son, is back, and they're going a big procession, big back to the capital. In the capital city, all the quadrangles, lanes and streets of the city and the raised sitting places at the crossings were thoroughly cleansed and sprinkled with sandalwood water, and auspicious grains such as rice and barley and flowers, fruits and many other auspicious presentations were scattered all over the city. The palace of the king was surrounded by walls made of marble, with many engravings made of valuable jewels like sapphire, which depicted the beautiful women sitting with shining jewel lamps in their hands. The saintly king Uttanapada, hearing the glorious deeds of Dhruva Maharaj and personally seeing also how influential and great he was, felt very satisfied, for Dhruva's activities were wonderful to the supreme degree. When after concentration the king saw that Dhruva Maharaj was suitably mature to take charge of the kingdom, and that his ministers were agreeable to the citizens, and the citizens were also very fond of him, he enthroned Dhruva as the emperor of his planet. After considering his advanced age and deliberating on the welfare of his spiritual self, King Uttanapada detached himself from worldly affairs and entered the forest. Dhruva Maharaj ki jai. Hare Krishna. So it is amazing, as you can see, that how the journey of a devotee is, and the journey does not end; it continues with the pursuit of the yakshas, and then Manu teaching him, and then him going back to Godhead. Him also going back to Godhead. So it's an amazing whole story. One can see the whole progress of a devotee's life. Because sometimes in the Bhagavatam we only get an excerpt of a devotee's life, but with Dhruva Maharaj we can see from the very beginning, from 5-year-old until he even goes back home, back to Godhead. So that's a very interesting story, and we can take so many valuable instructions from it. And it is heart-touching, no? To see that what now stood up for me personally was that he actually prayed and made so many austerities and actually got to see the Supreme Personality of Godhead. And then he the Supreme Lord also answered his prayers by only giving him some benedictions, which then Dhruva Maharaj was actually sad about, you know. One would have expected that Dhruva Maharaj, after having had the darshan of the Lord, would be complete in ecstasy, you know, jumping, yeah, Haribol. But he was very sad because he had asked for such petty material desires. And so we should also be very careful while we are in the temple, while we are approaching the Supreme Lord. What is our real ambition? Is it to please the Lord, or do we have such small desires which we might regret and might hold on to unnecessarily? You know, I want to distribute many books. I want to be a big book distributor. I want to be a great devotee, known by everybody. No, the main thing is that we have is to be a devotee of the Lord, to be pure-hearted, and this will bring light to the whole world and to everybody. Whatever we do will become perfect. So we should keep this focus in mind. Hare Krishna. If there are no burning questions, then I will end. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna.